Well, if you are new or you're visiting, we are a beautiful multi-generational family on a mission, and we want to be a family in this space that does two things really beautifully. Firstly, if you're with us most weeks, you'll hear me say, we're a family on a mission. We want to go all out for our sub-25s. And the reason being is that they estimate that around 86% of people in the church join the church before the age of 25. 86% of people. And we want to be people who reach those people, who love those people, who care for those people, who go all out for these people. And what we're seeing over England at the moment is faith rising, faith kind of coming alive, particularly within those age groups. And so we want to do absolutely everything possible to jump on that bandwagon. And secondly, we want to be a group of people who see miracles everywhere. It's our prayer that as you gather, as you meet, as we kind of become the church, gathered and scattered, that you would see miracle after miracle after miracle. And so this is who we are. We are a multi-generational family on a mission to see those who don't know who Jesus is know who he is, and to see the miracles like beautifully and wonderfully and maybe slightly chaotically just kind of bursting out of the seams of this space. And so over the summer we're in this series looking at He Cares. So a few weeks ago I looked about He cares for our rest, cares about our well-being. Then we had a little break. Today I'm going to pick up He Cares about you. Peter's going to pick up part 2 next week. And then we've got some great things planned for the rest of the summer. And so can we have those people who are going to read? Jasmine, Matthew, could you come up? Can we welcome these guys, everybody? Can we welcome these guys? Push your way through. And we're going to dive into the woman at the well found in John chapter 4. And so if you've got a Bible or a phone, would you turn there? And we're going to dive in together.
So the reading is taken from John's Gospel, chapter 4, starting at verse 3. And I'm reading from the New International Version, for those of you who are looking at it online. So he left Judea and went back once more to Galilee. Now he had to go through Samaria. So he came to a town in Samaria called Sychar, near the plot of ground Jacob had given to his son Joseph. Jacob's well was there, and Jesus, tired as he was from the journey, sat down by the well. It was about noon. When a Samaritan woman came to draw water, Jesus said to her, "Will you give me a drink?" His disciples had gone into the town to buy food. The Samaritan woman said to him, "You are a Jew, and I am a Samaritan woman. How can you ask me for a drink?" The Jews do not associate with Samaritans. Jesus answered her, "If you knew the gift of God and who it is that asks you for a drink, you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water." "Sir," the woman said, "you have nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. Where can you get this living water? Are you greater than our father Jacob, who gave us the well and drank from it himself, as did also his sons and his livestock?" Jesus answered, "Everyone who drinks this water will be thirsty again. But whoever drinks the water I give them will never thirst. Indeed, the water I give them will become in them a spring of water welling up to eternal life." The woman said to him, "Sir, give me this water, so that I won't get thirsty and have to keep coming here to draw water."
He told her, "Go call your husband and come back." "I have no husband," she replied. Jesus said to her, "You are right when you say that you have no husband. The fact is, you have 5 husbands, and the man you now have is not your husband. What you have just said is quite true." "Sir," the woman said, "I can see you are a prophet. Our ancestors worshipped on this mountain, but you Jews claim that the place where we must worship is in Jerusalem." "Woman," Jesus replied, "believe me, a time is coming when you will worship the Father neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem. You Samaritans worship what you do not know. We worship what we do know, for salvation is from the Jews. Yet a time is coming, and has now come, when the true worshippers will worship the Father in spirit and in truth, for they are the kind of worshippers the Father seeks. God is spirit, and his worshippers must worship the spirit and in truth." The woman said, "I know the Messiah, called Christ, is coming. When he comes, he will explain everything to us." Then Jesus declared, "I, the one speaking to you, I am he." Just then, his disciples returned and were surprised to find him talking with a woman. But no one asked, What do you want, or why are you talking with her? Then, leaving her water jar, the woman went back to town and said to the people, "Come, see a man who told me everything I've ever done. Could this be the Messiah?" They went out of the town and made their way towards him.
Thank you. Can we thank these guys? Thank you. So, forewarning, what we're going to do is I'm going to share about 10 minutes worth of thinking, and then we're going to break into little groups and we're going to chat, and then we're going to come back in for the final little bit. I find this story fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. I wonder whether there's someone in your life who, when you see coming down the street, you cross the road. Is there anyone who you see? Just because they're a bit OTT, maybe they're a little bit exhausting to be around, maybe they just, they kind of take more energy than they give you, I think, here's a confession, for many people, I have been that person in their lives. That they've seen me coming and they've crossed the road. That was particularly true in my teenage years. I remember being in church as a teenager and finding it really hard for a number of reasons. Struggling with it, wrestling with church, being thrown out time and time again, being violent, being aggressive, being rude, being obnoxious, being very, very publicly uninterested in what was happening, being critically loud. And that was exacerbated by people who understood my pain the least. The harshest critics brought out the worst in me. Have you been there? Can you understand this woman's pain? This is where we meet the woman. Misunderstood, therefore ostracized. Having a bombardment of abuse on a daily basis. Loud voice after loud voice. Tart after tart. Look after look. Tucking their kids away from the woman time and time again. Everywhere she goes, she is known. And she's just looking for a single person to say, I get you, I love you, I'm here for you, I care for you, I want you. And isn't that our charge today? Isn't that why we exist as a church? Isn't that what we're here for? To be a family on a mission, to say to the world around us, I get you, I love you, I'm for you. And then to beautifully show them who Jesus really is. Jesus, the man who restores our spirits, the man in whose presence we regain our life. And so I want to follow a journey in this story. I think there are three things happening in this story. The first thing is that I think you matter to God. Like this woman, I want you to know that you matter to God. And if you leave here hearing nothing else, it is this: you matter to God. You are made for a reason. You are loved beyond measure. God made you and he loves you and you matter to him. And then when you know that you matter to God, it should move us internally. It should call us into action. It should allow our spirits to know what we were designed for. We're called to be malleable, inspired Christians, which should then equip us to model what life is really like as we know who Jesus is, as we tap into the source of all creation, as we experience heaven on earth on a daily basis. So can I start with the fact that you matter? You matter. Can we just read this little bit in verse 4? Verse 4 I find fascinating. It says this: now he, what was the word? Had to go through Samaria. Interesting languages, isn't it? He had to go through Samaria, which is weird because, forgive me if you've been in church all your life and you know the geographical kind of context behind this, but this is not the Jewish route. The Jewish route is around Samaria. He goes around. If you're traveling from Jerusalem to Nazareth, you do not go through Samaria. It's a bit like us. If we're going to London, where do we go? 303, obviously, right? 303 up the motorway. This is a bit like us going via Birmingham to get to London. Doesn't make sense. Or if we're going to go down to Cornwall to go via North Devon. Doesn't make any sense, but there is a reason for it. But yet Jesus, this is Jesus' route. Straight through the middle. And this is kind of interesting for Jesus. This is the route that we would take, but it is not the route that Jewish people take. They are under strict Jewish law. One of those laws is do not interact with Samaritans. Where do Samaritans live? They live in Samaria. And therefore, going into Samaria would make you spiritually unclean, which to Jewish listeners, to Jewish audiences, meant being out of touch with God. More than that, being cut off from God because you are unclean. And therefore, in the words of AC/DC, these guys are on a highway to hell. Quite literally. The Jews avoided Samaria. And therefore, what Jesus is doing is he is breaking apartheid. He's breaking conventions. And he's doing it at an unconventional time and hour. Forgive me again if you've been here all your life, but for those of us who haven't, noon means hot weather. Noon is where you get the factor 50 out right and you sit on the beach. It is warm, it is hot, but noon is a time that you do not draw water. Why? Because it is warm. No one wants warm water, everyone wants cold water. Noon, people are siestaing. If you want to avoid people, when do you go out? Noon. Noon is that time of day where you find the people who no one else wants to be around. And they, quite frankly, want to be around no one else. This is the equivalent. I'm trying to be careful with little ears in the room. This is the equivalent of you and I wandering out on a Monday night at 4 o'clock in the morning and finding the most interesting, dodgy place that you allow your mind to wander to. And finding the most interesting, dodgy person in that interesting, dodgy place. And start to have dialogue about political discussions and religious discussions. This is not what Jesus should be doing. He's in the wrong place at the wrong time. One commentator described him as being behind enemy lines. It's kind of interesting, isn't it? I think God is in the business of going behind enemy lines. I think this is God's plan for your life, to invade the areas, the motions, the beliefs that the enemy has laid in your life and to take them captive in the name of Jesus. To show where real life comes from. To bring you life in all its fullness. I love the painting of this by Carracci, painted in the 5th century, which shows Jesus meeting this woman. And it's kind of an interesting posture, isn't it? Like, it's interesting that the most powerful man to ever have existed doesn't tower over the woman, but sits and kneels and looks up into her eyes and says, "Hey, would you give me a drink?" And she says to him, "Hey, you're a Jew? You're a Jewish man. What are you doing? Why would you do this? How can you ask me for a drink?" And to which he replies, "If you knew who I am, you'd be asking me for a drink, and I'd give you living water that would restore your soul so you don't have to keep coming back to this well." And she says, "Sir, give me this water. Sir, give me this water." There is one reason for this route. It is the woman. It is interesting, isn't it, that she is the person who Jesus had to meet. Jesus cares so much for humanity that he places himself in the uncomfortable position in order to bring you and I the knowledge that you matter to him. In your life, he will walk through the uncomfortable, dingy, dark, behind the scenes, overgrown places and passages in order to bring you life in abundance, to show you beyond doubt that you matter to him. There's a beautiful Catholic theologian called Raymond Brown, and he says this, he pans out the dialogue like this: Jesus asked a Samaritan for water, violating social customs of the time. The woman mocks Jesus for being in need. Jesus shows that the real reason for his action is not that he is inferior or in need, but because of his superior status. And then she realizes who she is talking to her. There is one thing in this passage that will prohibit Jesus' work in your life. It's this little question found in verse 9. Jesus, how can you ask me? How can you ask me? I wonder whether you've been here before. Perhaps you've been in church and something's happened that week and you're on the brink of something and you feel the move of God. And you feel God saying, are you okay? And you're like, God, don't ask me that right now because you know that I'm on the brink and you know that I'm about to break down and you know I can't hold it together. How can you ask me? I wonder whether you've felt him ask that uncomfortable question like, hey, I'm leading you to have this conversation with your friends about who I really am. And you're like, God, how can you ask me? Or you feel God say, hey, I want you to forgive that person. And you say, God, how can you ask me? Or you hear him sort of prompting you to that uncomfortable thing of serving others, giving your resources, your time, your finances to build the kingdom. And you're like, God, how can you ask me? See, these questions seem to reflect our insecurities. Like we have something to lose. But in this moment, the woman, she is at no risk, no danger by being subservient. But hear this, Jesus could be hauled in front of a court for his action of going to unthinkable people at unthinkable times. This action of Jesus going to this woman, he could be hauled in front of a court for. And so it's important for you to know that Jesus calls you because he loves you, because he is for you. And when it feels uncomfortable and uneasy and unnatural, there are three things at play. Firstly, he understands. Jesus understands when he calls you into a moment and you're like, oh Lord, do I have to? He understands. He's quite literally been here before. Secondly, he'll never leave you. There's one time that God's presence has left humanity on earth, and that is Jesus on the cross. God's plan, God's promise is that he will never leave you nor forsake you. He is always with you. And that thirdly, as the fight between your head and your heart kick in, you have to remind yourself that this is so often the place that we find life. As we wander out and we say, hey, can I tell you about Jesus? Hey, can I tell you about a guy that I've met? Hey, can I tell you about this God who wants to bring you life in abundance? Hey, I'm not going that way no more. I'm going this way because I've met who Jesus really is. This is where life kicks in. This is where we proclaim that we matter to God and we are reminded again of who we are and whose we are. First of all, you need to know that you matter to God, knowing that you are the jewel in the crown of creation. And so I want to break out here. I want to break it here. And I want to ask the question, knowing Jesus went out of his way to meet the Samaritan woman, to show her that she mattered, do you believe that you matter in the same way to God? Do you believe that you matter in the same way to God? And if you do, how does that belief change how you live and how you're empowered to have conversations with others who don't yet know that they matter to God? Do we have a good conversation? Yeah, cool, okay. Well, this woman is moved, isn't she? She's clearly moved. She has a different posture, both physically and spiritually, after having one conversation with Jesus. This conversation changes her whole life. Her life is restored. Jesus is clearly in the game of making people that and they're not just liked and forgotten about like a post on Instagram. But it's fair to say this woman's persona, stigma, fear, doubt, spiritual debt isn't just brushed to one side and forgotten about, but it is corroded in Jesus' love. It's not like her problems aren't still there. She's still getting the looks. She's still getting the comments. She's still going back to the guy who's not her husband. But she is not the same. She is different. Her circumstances no longer define her, but this conversation with Jesus does. And it should teach us how we're to deal with the perceptions that we hold in our lives about our reality and the reality of the people around us. That voice that you hear in your head that you say, Jesus, you couldn't possibly use me. couldn't possibly enable me to have a conversation with my neighbors, with my friends, because they know who I really am. Because I've been on that holiday with them. Because I've been out to that place with them. Because they've seen me in this condition. Because they've seen the way that I've treated my kids. Because they've seen the conversations that I've had when I've been in a hurry. Because they know who I really am. It's just false news. False news. Jesus doesn't see you at your worst. He sees you through the lens of who he's making you to be, through and in Jesus. Or, like that conversation, like where God says, like, hey, I want you to have this conversation about faith in this place at work. And you say, Lord, if I have that conversation, I'll be overlooked for the promotion. If I have that conversation, I'll be stuck on the career ladder. If I have that conversation, I'll be overlooked. Well, maybe, yeah. Maybe, yeah, that is a consequence, isn't it? But maybe it might be the biggest wake-up call to your colleagues about how seriously you take this life of following Jesus, about the love that he brings, about the care he wants to bestow upon them. Jesus is not in the business of laying down breadcrumbs for the spiritually hungry. He's in the business of laying on a feast of love, which changes who we are, changes our perspectives. See, what Jesus does is he shows us again that his love is real. Never has there been such a real love exchange than between him and the Father. And we get to play our part in the way he loves us. Because as the Father loves the Son loves the Spirit, and the Son loves us in the same kind of way. It's beautiful and wonderful. Far greater than the love that is exchanged between two human beings. And this love experienced by Jesus should change everything. We need to know that we matter to God. And as we matter to God, we need to know that we are moved. The love of God should move us. I was this way, I'm now this way. I once was this on this track, I've now found Jesus. My life was like this, it is now like this. It causes us to be moved and shaped to model what it looks like to follow Jesus. Unlimited, we pretty much week in, week out, say that our whole goal in life is to love God. To love God with all of our heart, all of our soul, all of our being. To become more like Jesus. And as we become more like Jesus, to do the things that he did. See, when we look Jesus in the eye, we know that we are loved. And it should be overwhelming to the point where we are moved, not just emotionally, but moved to restructure our thought process, our cognitive patterns, our models of security, our models of who we are and how we be. It should change us, move us in the security of his love and his gaze upon us. His love should be the ultimate motivator in our lives. It should bring us security like nothing else. And we should be moved to do the things that we otherwise would not be able to do because of that love. This story starts with a woman saying, "Why are you asking me? Why are you asking me?" And it concludes with her saying, "I know the Messiah, the Christ, is coming. When he comes, he'll explain everything to us." When Jesus heard that, he declared, "I, the one speaking to you, I am he." Just then his disciples returned, and they were surprised to hear him talking with a woman, but no one asks, "What do you want?" or "Why are you talking with her?" Then leaving her water jar, the woman went back to the town and said to the people, "Come see a man who told me everything I have ever done. Could this be the Messiah?" Then the town came out and made their way towards him. Just pause for a moment. Think about this woman. Think about how we started the story. She's heading back into the town to say what? "Come see a man who told me everything that I ever did." Just ponder the significance of this moment. The woman who's out at noon in order not to get nasty looks from the neighbors, the touch, the sighs, the groans, push back to get water at the midday. The woman who wasn't loved, cared for, seen, or heard. The woman who's gone from the least secure to the most secure. The most scandalous to the most sanctified. The first to be downgraded, disgraced, to being Jesus' chosen delegate in her town. We, like Jesus, often say, how can you say that to me? How can you ask that of me? How can you think I can do that? And in that moment, we have two options. First is we know that we matter to God. And because we matter to God, we are moved and we model this life. And we advance with an attitude of hope and adventure and joy and love because of who Jesus is. Or we tread back into the shadows and agree with the lies of the enemy and nod our heads and continue like life doesn't matter. See, I think that we are called to know that we are loved and that we matter to God and to be intentionally moved and to model what a free, abundant life looks like in and through Jesus. Only in and through Jesus. There's a Greek word, zeo. Zeo is what happens when a water is heated in a flask and it bubbles and it's so kind of full of energy that it kind of pours out over the top, a bit like a pan on a hop. That's where we get the word zeal from. Passion that is uncontrollable. I think that we are called to know that we matter to God to the place where we cannot contain it any longer and we spill out into the world around us. So we heard from Peter about the coffee trailer. So here is where I conclude. My conclusion today is short. Come and see. Come and see how good God is. See how much you matter to him. Know how valuable you are in his eyes. And allow the Spirit of God to move you. To move you into a life that seemed unimaginable without him. And don't allow a single moment to pass where you're not modeling the life radically changed and charged by the goodness of God in every place, in every sphere of influence, in every space that your feet find themselves in. Allow yourself to be overflowing with his kindness and his goodness and his love and his passion for you.